Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of One Piece, the series where it takes 908 chapters for the reader to be introduced to the final villain of the story. Possibly. See, now it all makes sense. Now I understand why Dofi wanted to get the immortality property of the Opi Opi no Mi. In fact, all of us are going to need that devil fruit ability at some point if we're going to live long enough to find out what this character's face looks like. It's 3 p.m. and we have Orlumbus here, planning out some stuff. Now, I believe that this is the longest cover story for any member of the Grand Fleet, so my hunch is that this ultimately, the ending of this Orlumbus cover story will intertwine with the present time, with the main storyline. Or at the very least, we'll definitely get to find out something pretty important out of this cover story that will be relevant for the main storyline, either in the present or in the future. I feel like there's no point in prolonging that story if that's not the case. Anyway, Manchuri heals the mermaid, heals Shirahoshi. Everybody's getting along, like the princesses are all getting along, they're all making friends. And then Pell comes in and talks to Vivi. Vivi asks him about Cobra, and Pell says that he was given a letter and that he is now currently meeting with King Riku and Fujitora, which in my opinion makes perfect sense because Fujitora's whole game plan here, his main goal is to abolish the Shichibukai system. And so I think that in order for Fujitora to make a strong argument as to why the Shichibukai system hasn't worked and it's actually been abused, you would need King Riku and King Cobra because, you know, King Cobra, the king of Alabasta, King Riku, the king of Dressrosa, they were both rulers, but some Chichibukai, Doflamingo and Crocodile, kind of overthrew them, or at least, you know, they reigned and they abused their power and they were just complete jerks. They were total tyrants within those kingdoms. So I think that's why Fujitora needs to talk to these kings in specific, you know, because Fujitora is a marine. So I don't know how much influence he would have by himself when it comes to the political world. But if he's backed up by Riku and Cobra, he has a better case in terms of like why the Shichibukai system should be dismantled. In fact, if they do support him, I wouldn't be surprised if there is no longer a Shichibukai system by the end of this arc. Anyway, Mios Guard says that he's going to be taking responsibility for protecting Shirahoshi, which is good. And then we get this shot of Pangea Castle, but there's like a walkway. There's like a walkway with an arrow there, and there's 3 heavily guarded gates. And we see what one leads to, but we don't see what the other 2 lead to. So my question is, what do the other 2 lead to, Oda? Do one of those gates on either side lead to the location of the secret treasure? Perhaps? I don't know. There's actually a theory that I want to talk about by the end of the video. It's not my theory. I actually read it on Reddit, and it's from a Korean YouTuber, but I think it's actually one of the best theories I've read. So I don't want to say it right here because it could potentially be a major spoiler. So I'll give you a warning by the end of the video so that you can leave if you don't want to hear it. Anyway, we find out that one of those gates leads to the town where the Celestial Dragons reside in, and we get introduced to Queen Mother Connie. Now, I don't know if Queen Connie is an actual person that Bonney is trying to imitate, or if she just transformed herself into an old lady and just made up a name for herself and said that she was from Sorbet Kingdom. But we do know that sorbet is actually a dessert, frozen fruit dessert. And we do know from Kuma's introduction that Sorbet Kingdom is actually a legit kingdom. But the name by itself just got me thinking back to Whole Cake Island, like how a lot of stuff there and the characters were named after sweets or desserts or like food-related things. So I don't know if there could be some connection there. And it was such a pleasant surprise to see Bonney in this. It's funny because we actually know very little about her, but she's actually one of my favorite female characters. I can't really figure out why though. Unfortunately, Kuma at this point is just being dehumanized by Roswald. Roswald was actually one of the Celestial Dragons that was introduced back in Subodi Archipelago. He's actually Charlos's father. What's interesting though is that as of this chapter, both Kuma and Bonney seem to be related or have some connection with royalty. Well, Kuma for sure, because he was the former king of Sorbet Kingdom. Bonney, we still don't know. But what I find surprising though is that if you look at the way that Oda drew them as kids, they don't seem like they were part of royalty back then. Like if you look at Kuma's design, it doesn't seem like he grew up well off. And if you look at Bonney, like she looks even worse, I think. She's just like, I mean, it could be like a rags to riches tale for both of them. I mean, in this shot, she's surrounded by food, which contrasts heavily with the way that she's dressed. You know, it's just like, I mean, look at the way that she's dressed. So maybe somebody took her in and gave her all that food. Maybe Kuma was the person to take care of her. She does say in the chapter that she can't believe that she ran into him this soon. Now, is she referring to Kuma, or is she referring to Roswald or Carlos? Who is she talking about? If you remember back in Marineford, Bonney was actually kind of getting emotional. You know, she was tearing up watching the broadcast of the war. And back then I remember that people were speculating that the reason for this was because she actually had feelings for Ace. Some people were even saying that Bonney was Ace's girlfriend at one point. But now it seems more likely that she was crying over Kuma being dehumanized. Maybe Kuma's memory being wiped out. Maybe that's what she had a problem with, and that's why she's here. One thing that we know for sure, though, is that she wants revenge. Because after Marineford ended, she was like, okay, I have to track this guy down. It's all his fault. You know, she wants somebody to pay for something. And she's like, let's go to the New World, boys. So whether it's a specific celestial dragon that she's searching for, or Vegapunk, we don't know at this point. But we do know that she goes to the New World, and that's when Blackbeard intercepts her. And Blackbeard wants to date her. He tells her, like, yo, be my girl. She declines, and then Akainu shows up. Blackbeard and his crew automatically run away the moment they realize that Akainu is headed for the same island that they're in. And Akainu actually tells her, yo, when I found out that you had escaped, I got concerned. Alright, so that right there should have been, I mean, that was a big hint to Bonney being connected in some way, shape, or form to somebody of royalty, or somebody, you know, in a higher sphere. Because if Akainu wanted her dead, he would have killed her right there and then. And he was actually saying, "Oh, I kind of need to take you back." And so because I think that one of the main purposes of the Reverie from a narrative standpoint is to get more people, more characters, more allies to sympathize with Luffy's cause, I can see Bonnie's story going one of two ways. If she's there to rescue Kuma, if she's there to try and bring him back, that kind of coincides with the same goal that the revolutionaries underground were talking about. That's pretty much what Sabo was saying that they were aiming for. He says, we either get this done or we die. So if that's the case, I could definitely see Bonney sympathizing with the revolutionaries, maybe even joining them. Now, Kuma was a revolutionary, so I don't know how much she knows about that, how much, she knows about Kuma and his role in the revolutionary army. And speaking of the Revolutionary Army, there was a theory about Morley being the potential creator of level 5.5 in Impel Down. You know how there's like supposed to be a level in between 5 and 6, but nobody knew. Like only like Ivankov and his people knew. So I think this chapter pretty much confirms that Morley was in fact the person who created that level, or created the space to have that 5.5 level at Impel Down. And then the second story path that I potentially see Bonney following is, if she is in fact tracking down Vegapunk, I can see her come back into the story once Vegapunk gets introduced in the flesh. Once we get an arc and we see Vegapunk in that future arc, I can see Bonney coming back in there as well. Another thing is that since this is an infiltration mission for Bonney, Oda could pretty much use her as a POV, point of view character, and we may end up finding some secrets of the land of Mariejois that we would normally not be able to find out otherwise. And then we get the round table scene with all the kings and queens, the rulers, just coming together. It's a very, very great panel. The art in this arc has been tremendous. Like, for establishing shots like these, just great. This whole thing's going to last 7 days, and apparently King Hamburger is going to be the moderator for the discussion. Now, I actually went around and counted the people there. I counted 49 characters, which makes sense because Germa was recently kicked out. So some of these rulers we had actually seen before, like this guy here. He's the king from Kano, which is the country where Don Qingjiao and Sai are from. Others we just had brief glimpses of, like this Clockbeard here. His face is actually revealed in the chapter, and apparently he's, I guess, the representative of like the One Piece equivalent of the UK. So I'm guessing his beard would be a reference to Big Ben. But we've definitely seen some of the guys that are sitting at the table before, after Zou ended and before Whole Cake Island began. Then we see the Gorosei walking down the hall with their suits, just business as usual, casually mentioning potential genocide even, which, by the way, is another way of Oda saying, I'm not going to tell you what that conversation between them and Shanks was all about. This is One Piece. where you have to keep the audience guessing for over 908 chapters. The Gorosei say that King Cobra has requested an audience with them, and he could be there. Like, the reason for this meeting could be that he wants to talk about the Shichibukai system being abolished, but I mean, I've said this before, I think King Cobra's gonna die. I think, like, he's old. There were some references to his health not being so good by Wapple, I believe. Vivi seems ready to rule. She seems like a very fit successor for him. I think something's going to go down with the Kingdom of Alabasta. The thing is, like, they even mentioned the fact that Alabasta was the only kingdom who decided not to stay in Mariejois back in the day when the 20 kingdoms got together. They were like, no, we're gonna live down with the common folk. Now, what's interesting is that if you remember, Alabasta, along with Fishman Island, Alabasta and Fishman Island are the only two kingdoms that have represented, well, as far as we know, they are the only two kingdoms that have representatives at that table that have poneglyphs hidden within their territories, okay? The Fishman Island poneglyph talks about Joy Boy and his apology, and the Alabasta poneglyph talks about the location of an ancient weapon, Pluton. And I'm mentioning this because in this chapter, we have two pictures, one of Shirahoshi, who happens to be an ancient weapon, and another one of Vivi, who is from Alabasta, where the poneglyph describing Pluton is located in. I just don't think it's a coincidence that that character I'll call her Im, or I'll call him Im, has a picture of Shirahoshi and Vivi. And I guess, based off of the shreds that are, you know, scattered on the floor of that garden, which is interesting that they have a garden and they have like a freezer, so it's like, you know, different type of environments for this Im character that is walking around Mariejois. But I think that this also confirms that the second poster behind Luffy's in the chapter where we saw that giant straw hat was in fact Blackbeard's. So Blackbeard does in fact have a bounty. It's not a surprise that Yonko can have bounty because we did see one of Big Mom's earlier bounty posters when she was a child, when she was younger. She was worth 500 mil. So I can't wait to get a chapter where all of the Yonko bounties get revealed at the same time. I think that would be epic. And so the new question here is, what do Luffy, Blackbeard, Vivi, and Shirahoshi have in common? I mean, from a narrative standpoint, you can argue that Luffy and Blackbeard are the two characters that are closest to becoming king of the pirates, or at least are the two characters that are actively making gains to reach that goal. But overall, I think the main theme here is that those four characters represent a threat to the established order, which, by the way, kind of made me think that Blackbeard may not even be one of the big bads, one of the final villains of the One Piece series. I hate to make this comparison, but I'm going to be honest. My first reaction when I saw that his poster was shredded was, wait a minute, is Blackbeard going to turn out to be like an Obito type character? Like, is it going to turn out that by the end he was just a victim gone wrong? A victim that you can sort of sympathize with, but still kind of hate? I hope that doesn't happen. I really hope that doesn't happen. Because Blackbeard and Obito have done some horrible, horrible things. Okay? Anyway, we have this shot of the Gorosei straight up kneeling, bowing, all right, to this figure who's sitting on the throne. So what Oda did with last week's chapter was very clearly a bait and switch. He baited us. He was like, look at how cool it is that Shanks can have an audience with the Gorosei. You know, he's a pirate, he's a Yonko, and he's straight up talking to these guys during a reverie. And then he had like Merlin explain how the Gorosei were like apparently the top, you know, they were at the top of the totem pole. And how nobody could sit on this throne because it would represent like a dictatorship, like how the kingdoms had agreed to this rule because otherwise like everybody would feel like there's no real equality and there's actually a superior. And then this chapter is like, boom, the stuff that I set up in 907 was a lie and you fell for it. You fell for it because now we have a final villain. I mean, I don't really know if that's going to be the final villain of the story, but it's pretty bad when you have the Gorosei kneeling and taking orders from somebody, to the point where it got me to question, like, do the Celestial Dragons even know about Im? Like, because they seem pretty unaware. They seem like, they think that they're at the top and they're like, oh, blah, 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 and slaves and stuff, but I don't even think they would be aware of this. I think only the elite within the Celestial Dragons would know about this. Merlin didn't know about this guy, obviously, because he was talking to Stelly and telling him about the throne, and like, you know, nobody has ever sat on it. Now the Gorosei are asking for a name. Tell us the name of the light that should be extinguished from history. The moment I read that, the light, that reminded me of the Straw Hat being the only window that was lit up in the freezer. I mean, the most cliche answer would be Luffy, for him to say Luffy's name. It's funny, like, do you think at one point that Aim went into the same vault, and instead of the Straw Hat being lit up, there was a giant ace hat that was shining, and then they were like, the person who wears this hat is the next light that I want you to extinguish. Make sure you execute him publicly at Marineford. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but you never know. So they're going to be aiming for somebody new. We don't know who yet. It could be Vivi, because that's the poster that hasn't been torn. And maybe that's how Cobra dies, trying to protect Vivi. But Lindbergh in this chapter also makes it a point, like, this is the whole reason for why Kuma has been treated the way he has. It's because they want to make an example out of him. To make a point that even if you're royalty, if you go up against the top branch, you're going to get stomped. Now, Oda finishes up the chapter by drawing this character's eye. Alright, and if my memory serves me correctly, I think there's not a whole lot of characters in the world of One Piece that Oda draws that type of eye on. So, from what I remember, I think there's only about 4 characters that have like the double, not iris, but like the double circled eye. And they are as follows. One of them is Mihawk, alright? Another one is Robin. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can see that design when it comes to Robin's eye. The other one is Robin's mom, Nico Olivia, and then the final one is Sunisha, the elephant from Zoe. And all those characters seem to have some special attribute or skill tied into who they are and what they do. Like Mihawk is the world's greatest swordsman. The Ohara scholars are the only ones who were left that could read the poneglyphs, and then Sunisha is like this giant elephant that has been cursed to walk the sea floor. It kind of gets you thinking about why the elephant was cursed and who it was that cursed it in the first place. Now this is where I'm going to get into the theory that I mentioned in the beginning of the video. It's one of the best theories I've heard. Again, it's not my theory. This came from a Korean YouTuber and it was posted on Reddit. So here we go. If you don't want to hear it, you can just leave. It's okay. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you later. So for starters, this theory starts off with the Eve tree. Now the Eve tree, we know for a fact, is this humongous tree, and its roots are all the way down in the ocean floor. In fact, it goes as deep as Fishman Island, and that's where Fishman Island gets its light from, because the top of the Eve tree absorbs the sunlight and reflects it, or it projects it down to its roots, okay? But the problem is that we've never actually seen the top of the Eve tree. So this theory suggests that the top of the Eve tree, because Fishman Island is located under the red line, and Mariejois is at the top of the red line, the theory suggests that the top of the tree is in Mariejois. Also, by now you have probably already noticed that the climate in Mariejois is very misty. It's just filled with mist, right? And so initially I thought that it was because it was so high up that's where the clouds were, and that's where, the mist would be. But then after reading the theory, I was like, wait a minute, what if this is Oda trying to hide something? What if Oda is using this mist on purpose to hide the top of the Eve tree? Now, I first read this theory 2 weeks ago, okay? But I had decided not to share it because I was still skeptical about it. But in this chapter, that panel, that page where Bonney is about to go into the gate, like the chapter even says, there's 3 heavily guarded gates. Why would you have 2 extra ones that lead to nowhere? It makes no sense. So you have 3 gates in that panel, all right? One in the south, one in the east, which is the one that Bonney goes into, and one in the north. The one in the north, if you look after what's after the gate, it's completely covered in mist. Either that or it's been erased. I don't know what happened there. So I do think that that's probably leading to something that will uncover the secret of the national treasure of Mariejois. Now, what about that top of the tree? Why is that so important? Well, the theory suggests that the top of the Eve tree, located in Mariejois, is actually the birthplace, the source of the devil fruits. That's why Doflamingo was able to get the Mera Mera no Mi so easily, because it was reborn there, and he has connections with the celestial dragons. It also explains why he wanted the immortality surgery done on him, so that he could be immortal, because if you eat more than one devil fruit, you die. But if he's immortal, he could just, he could have eaten up all those fruits
and just be super powerful. At least that's what the theory says. It could also explain why the admirals are like almost automatically given like these pretty rare Logia devil type fruits. And it could also explain why the CP9 agents, I think it was Kaku and Khalifa, like they were given these fruits, but they were told that we don't know what they do because they're new. Like they haven't been registered yet. I mean, but even now I'm still kind of skeptical about this theory being true. Like if it was that big of a tree, I figured somebody else would have already seen it and it wouldn't be like this well-kept secret. Also, like a tree that size, or the top of the tree should cast a pretty big shadow. But then again, I guess you could say, well, it absorbs sunlight, so it's special. Also, if the Eve tree is the only source of devil fruits, then how do the pirates get them? That's another question, right? So there's a lot of like different things. Unless you say, well, maybe it's so big. Maybe the top of the tree is so big that, after a fruit is ripe, it just falls from the tree and it just goes into the ocean. And that's how the pirates find them. Plus, there's another famous tree in the world of One Piece called the Adam tree. Adam and Eve. They obviously have some connection, so maybe the Adam tree is the actual source of devil fruits. I don't know. Or maybe both. I don't know. But that's the theory. I think it has a lot of merit, so I really wanted to share with you, especially after this chapter. But let me know, guys. What do you think? And that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you did. I really appreciate that. Subscribe to my channel for more One Piece related content. Comment down below and give me your opinion about the points that I brought up. Catch you guys later. Bye.